WhiskyJason here, whiskey from the viewpoint of an American over here in Germany, together with
Brian Treacy, Sagamore Spirit.
the president of Sagamore Spirit. Look at my shirt, Sagamore Rye. You gave that to me in June. Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming and seeing us in Baltimore, Maryland. It was great that you got to visit us.
It was actually fantastic of seeing just the great location you have there. I mean, you talked a little bit about it, but it's like I didn't really understand how great that location is or going to be in the future. That was just awesome, to be honest, to be there. Yeah.
Yeah, no, we're very, very lucky. So anybody ever gets a chance to visit us in Baltimore, we're right located in downtown Baltimore by the football and baseball stadiums, right overlooking the water, not far from Baltimore Washington International Airport. So we got everything at our fingertips. We're conveniently located, and there's always some sort of fun activity going on at the distillery.
That's exactly right. So let's say hi to a couple people here. Sven says hello, Jason and Brian. So Alex actually has some samples. He says we're ready to go. So Gören is a guy I met down here by the Lake of Constance on the border between Switzerland and Germany just a few weeks ago at the Hall of Angels Share, the whiskey fair down there. Good to see you. Hello, Flurp is actually tuning in from Poland. So he's cool. Over there. He's from Germany but lives in Poland. And Heiko is here and says, I can finally open my samples. Good evening, everyone. So very good. So for everyone who's watching and everyone who will watch the replay as well, could you maybe inform us a little bit about the history of this distillery? And maybe the one thing people I'm always asking the most is only rye? Nothing else? Really?
Yeah, I get that question a lot too.
I know.
And it's a fair question. But I'll tell you why. Yes, it's rye and only rye. And I'll tell you why.
You can rhyme. Very good.
Oh, yeah. I didn't even play on that. So being located here in Baltimore, Maryland actually has a very rich history of distilling. Goes back to, really the 1600s. It was predominantly rum at the time, though. And then, like so many things in our lives, right, we started getting hit with a lot of taxes and tariffs on the sugars and molasses coming out of the British West Indies. And so we didn't want to pay taxes and tariffs. We just wanted a good dram or a good drink of alcohol. And so if you've ever been to Baltimore, we are located on the waterfront, really the harbor, Chesapeake Bay.
One of the biggest protective harbors of the world.
Largest estuary.
Yeah, yes. Exactly. Thank you. That is the correct way of saying it.
Yes. And so we love to protect the watershed. It means a lot to us, and a lot of jobs and livelihood depend on it. And so we try to respect it with give it the utmost respect. But, it was a great way to access, the U.S. And so it was the second largest site for immigration next to Ellis Island. So Baltimore, Maryland, and the Mid-Atlantic had a tremendous amount of people from Germany and Poland and Scotland and Ireland who actually already knew how to distill on grain-based type products. You guys have a really good history there. And so we grew a lot of rye in our as a cover crop in our tobacco fields in the off season, and I'm pretty sure Germany already had a good history with working with rye and so forth. And so instead of paying taxes and tariffs on the molasses and sugars, they just said, "Why don't we make a different type of drink?" And so we had the 1733 Molasses Tax Act that ended all of that, and everybody started making nothing but rye whiskey by the early 1700s, mid 1700s. And so things really kind of flourished from there to the point where eventually, though, as we come out of the States here, the Revolutionary War, we're $54 million in debt from the war. And the good way to pay down that debt is the excise taxes on the distilleries, raise all the taxes on the distilleries. So you started having the rumblings of the whiskey rebellion. And that's when families like Basil Hayden and Jacob and Mary Beam left Maryland. And so a lot of folks don't realize that some of those big distillery names in Kentucky actually started in Maryland. Mm-hmm. And so luckily the whiskey rebellion ends peacefully. and flourishing really takes off in the U.S. Kind of fast forward from there, Maryland earns a really great reputation as a superior rye whiskey, especially in the 1800s. 1910, we have 44 distilleries in Maryland, all making whiskey, 21 in downtown Baltimore. We kept making it through Prohibition. It's one of the reasons Maryland's called the Free State. And then in 1933, they started switching over to subsidized corn and gearing up ethanol production and kind of falling in line for some of the requests to up the ethanol production as World War II seemed to be starting. And then really never made much of a comeback. And the last distillery closed its doors in the early 1980s here in Maryland. But we thought it was amazing that all these years, Maryland-style rye could live on for decades without anybody in Maryland actually doing it. And the distilleries themselves in Kentucky bought up a lot of the Maryland brand names and saw value the fact that the original American whiskey is rye whiskey. The birthplace of it is here in Maryland, Virginia, and Pennsylvania. And so that is why Sagamore Spirit, located here in Maryland, does one thing and one thing only. We do a Maryland-style rye. You know, we haven't been around that long. We're a fairly young company in the whiskey world. And so the reason we focus on the rye is, I guess, fairly obvious. That's what Maryland was famous for. We also, for us, we want to be great at one thing. We don't, I always feel that if we do a gin, a vodka, a rum, a bourbon, we do too many things. It can be distracting and challenging to become great at one thing. And so as young as we are, we have a lot to learn and a lot to achieve just in the rye whiskey category. So that's why we're laser focused on one type of spirit and the kind of why rye whiskey, if you will. So sorry if that was a long-winded answer.
No, I loved it. That's great.
know.
Now, I've been asked a few times, why did the original immigrants then to America not use, for example, barley, malted barley, like they did in Ireland and Scotland? Why did they go for rye? Would you have a good answer for that?
I don't have a good answer for that.
Okay.
If you have one, I'd love to hear it.
I was always informed that the barley needs a certain type of climate, and rye grows anywhere. And especially at the very beginning, the colder climate of New England and up there, that kind of wasn't conducive for the barley. But I'm not 100% sure. I was hoping you might confirm my suspicion there.
Barley definitely needs cooler weather. And, you know, rye actually needs cooler weather. We can't grow it much south of Maryland in the States. You know, as a matter of fact, we planting rye just last month. And so, you know, we plant it and it grows over the winter and it can germinate at about 1 degree Celsius. Mm-hmm. And so it's a fascinating, but I do think malting in general and malted barley is a bit of an art too. I think rye can be maybe a little bit friendlier just growing. I do think there is some truth to that. And then, you know, but I don't have a great answer to it. And now you got me quite a bit curious on that.
Now, if you find out, don't forget to inform me as well, because I've been asked that question dozens of times over here. All right. So
yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. And same goes for you.
Yes, of course, of course. Now, what I want to do, not everyone is really 100% firm on the geography of America. If I zoom out here, of course, we recognize the United States, and we talked about the Chesapeake Bay area. So this is actually all land. And so we have to go all the way up here to a deep water harbor here in Baltimore. And we can actually see that you're exactly here on the water side. We go over this way here to our nice little satellite map. We can see actually that here, something's unloaded there. What was that again?
Those are that's where the cruise ships come into Baltimore.
Cruise ships. All right. Oh, you're right beside a cruise ship. You couldn't have a better spot now, could you?
It's pretty good.
Yeah, exactly. So we have the sailboat charter harbor here. You have nice little buildings being built over here. I mean, it's just, and you're building yourself. You can see the red roofs and you can see the water tower and everything. It's just awesome. I mean, it was just amazing when I was there. I just thoroughly enjoyed it. So that's great. All right. So it says true. The rye quality is getting better and better. And the Irish love the rye. That's very good, Pat. And then there was another question. Maybe you can answer that, my friend over in Poland. He said, I was actually asking myself if American rye whiskey maybe might have been influenced by the Polish Lithuanians. They have a good barrel-aged rye over there called Staka. And maybe other Eastern Europeans also were driving force. But I think they came a little bit later, didn't they, as immigrants to the States?
They did, but they were a driving force. I absolutely do think that they played a role in that, because I think they had a history that goes back long before ours of doing that. And as a matter of fact, and I don't know if you noticed while you were here, Jason, but there are 3 bells that hang off of our water tower. And those 3 bells that they ring every Friday Rye Day at 5 o'clock to remind us it's time to leave the distillery and go get a good whiskey. But those came from a Polish church here in Baltimore that was here in the 1700s, and they were made by hand. And they were salvaged from an old church. And now we have them here at the distillery. And
here's the water tower. Here we have the bells, which I did not notice, to be honest.
Those are handmade, and they used to hang at a Polish church here in Baltimore. So it's a lot of great history here with immigration. And I think that's the reason that we got into whiskey making so well. It wasn't that was anybody here really doing it. It was from where they came from.
All right, so we're going to taste 3 of your core range products. Now, over here, Jeffrey said Sagamore Sherry is, I'm just going to use the word awesome, on fire, is great. Now, we over here in Germany don't yet have any of those special products. I'm going to continue to beg and plead and get on my knees and so on. And maybe one day we'll get some other things other than just the core range. But today it's the core range, and we're happy to have this. So we're going to start off with the Signature Rye. Tell us a little bit about this thing and the ABV and the mash bill and all that good stuff you can mention.
Yeah, absolutely. So, what I was referring to earlier is a Maryland style rye. So Maryland, rye whiskey in general tends to be known as a bit spicy as far as a whiskey goes. And what do we mean by that? Not necessarily habanero or jalapeno or anything like that. More the cooking spices, black pepper, mint, cinnamon, nutmeg, those types of spices. And so, but Maryland was known as kind of a sweeter, more fruit and floral rye whiskey. So it still has those classic rye notes we're looking for. So in the Signature Rye, which you poured there, Jason, is a blend of 4 to 6 year old rye whiskey. And then we distill 2 mash bills. We distill one that's 95% rye, 5% malted barley, and we age that separately from 4 to 8 years, depending on the product. And then we distill one we call our barely legal rye. So to be a rye whiskey, for those, you have to be at least 51% rye in your mash bill. Just like to be a bourbon, you have to be at least 51% corn. So we have to be at least 51% rye. And then after that, we can use whatever we'd like. So the other mash bill, we call it barely legal because it's just barely over the 51%. It's 52% rye, 43% corn, and 5% malted barley. We age that separately 4 to 8 years, depending on the product. And then every product we make has both of those 2 mash bills in them. And the reason we do that is we like the rye spice and complexity that we get from the 95.5 that brings the black pepper, the nutmeg, the cinnamon, the mint. And then we love kind of that fruit, sweet, floral, the caramels, the like dried apricot, the citrus, these other ones that barely legal rye can bring in and give it some layers of complexity, some depth, some roundness to it. And so the team very much handpicks, we like the 4-year-old barrels to be looking to bring in kind of this bright citrus. We like the 6-year-old barrels to bring in that rye spice and kind of sit over top of it. And so they're very selective in the rhyme and the reason and what barrels and what mash bills are used for what age. And then this was really what we consider to be our best swing at a Maryland style rye. So 41.5% ABV. Historically, Maryland ryes were 40 or 43% ABV. So we kind of split it down the middle.
Okay, that's also something that's new for me. Good.
Yeah, and so
I remember Interstate 83 is what I remember.
Yes, in 83, we also do drive Highway 83 and 83 proof to our farm where we get our grain and our spring water. And then we proof everything down using the limestone spring water from our farm, Sagamore Farm. But what we wanted here was something that was really approachable, easy to drink, yet still had depth, layers, and character. I also love this one neat. I love it with a big ice cube, but I also love it a Manhattan or an old fashioned. So, of this time of year, I love 2 ounces of this rye, half ounce of maple syrup, and some bitters and an orange peel as like a nice winter type drink. If you guys like eggnog, trade out the brandy and bring in the Sagamore Rye. You won't regret it. It really has just enough backbone to stand up in there and kind of shine and give some complementary notes. So, but that's what we look for in this product, is something that's very approachable and versatile.
Wonderful, wonderful. All right, so for everyone who ever wants to visit the distillery, just one more time, I'm going to share my screen here, because when I was there, I got to also go to your bar, and it looked a little bit like this, right?
That's right.
So that was very, very good with a with a view over the water. It was just an amazing time together with you. Thank you once again for that. So let's go for this. You might not know this, but actually in Germany, I did on my channel with a lot of my super fans, a blind rye mega tasting. So we had 18 different ryes. They had to be under 65 euros. They had to be under 50% ABV. And this was, it received bronze. It was third place. And what was very, very interesting is that the high ryes didn't win at all. So I was really surprised at that. They were the high rise they were 5, 6, 7, and 8 and so on. But the lower rise we apparently over here in Europe like a little bit better. And this was the lowest proof product in our final, and yet it did beat out a lot of other things that had a much higher proof because it just tastes so good. I really, really like this.
That's great. 3 out of 18. I'll take that.
I know. It was like, really. I mean, come on. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And I love blind tasting.
Yes.
It's really, there can be no bias. I think it's great. And I love the fact that, a lot of times they'll do blind tastings, but they'll put anything in there from 40% ABV to 60% ABV. Yeah. And then it's just, but I love how you categorized it you said under 50% ABV.
Yes, exactly. So we have 50 and under. So anything, we did have Bourbon products in there. So I can amend, Rittenhouse didn't win. You were better than Rittenhouse, for example.
Well, that's a nice range, that 40 to 50% ABV.
Exactly.
That's great.
Yep. And under the 65 euros was also very, very important. And by the way, this Saturday, we will be doing our second, because we said, hey, but there's all these ryes that are more than 50%. And so we have 6 different blind cask strength ryes that we're going to try. And I will inform you what place that receives. I could imagine it's going to be up in the top 3 as well. If not, who knows? It might be number 1. We'll find out.
Hopefully we do okay. That one seems to shine fairly well, but you never know, right? It's just how things go and everybody's palate that day. But that cask strength is, well, we'll get to it in a little bit.
We'll get to that in a second. Now, one little thing that we have not mentioned, but you have almost talked about that. It says here it's a blend of straight rye whiskeys that we have now in Germany. Yep. The first batches we had were just straight rye. Now we have a blend of straight rye. There's a little bit of I like this story. Could you share that with us?
You talking about fading out?
Yes, exactly.
Yes. So as I mentioned, a rich history of distilling here in Maryland. Well, we didn't have a distillery when we first started. We had to build one. And instead of telling you about the history of distilling rye and then saying, here's my vodka in the meantime, we decided that we would work with MGP. Yeah. And they were great partners. And then we got our distillery up and running in 2017. And luckily at that point, we needed to no longer work with MGP, but we liked the aged product that we had now gotten from MGP. We did nothing. We contract distilled with them. We never bought anything aged. So we bought, everything was new make that we had made specific to it, the mash bills that we wanted.
It's very because I looked at the mash bills at MGP recently. It's like there is no 52% rye mash bill.
No. Yeah, we were lucky on that one.
Point. It was always contract distilling in for you and only for you.
That's right. And so, but so great partners, great way to get started. But we built a reason for this. We built the distillery for a reason.
Yes.
We wanted to control. We wanted to really drive excellence in everything we did, and strive to have, what hopefully someday will be considered one of the best rye whiskeys in the world. And you have to own everything from start to finish, I think, from when it comes to that. So that's why we built the distillery, so we could really own it all from start to finish. And now we're a blend of straight rye whiskeys because it's distilled in 2 different states in the bottle. And what batch did you get there, Jason? But if your batch, probably close to maybe 11 or 12?
We have 11 AW. Good
Okay.
job. Good job with your 11 there. Yeah.
So, you're probably looking at a little over a third of that being our make. And then this time next year, you're probably looking at close to 80%.
I love that.
And then
I just love that we can watch and experience that transition at the moment. I mean, the goal is to have your own juice totally, but hey, much better than selling a lot of vodka or gin or anything else. So, hey, you are rye, you're going to sell only rye. And now you did learn from the masters, I must admit, as well.
Yeah. So we're 2 things. The great is one, a lot of our whiskey has 6, 7, 8-year-old rye in it. We like that sweet spot for rye whiskey. Our make here in Maryland is just now getting to be 5, 5.5, almost 6. Yeah. And so, but we didn't want to go, well, now we can put ours in it, just make it all 4-year. So we're slowly fading as our stuff gets older and older, the rest will fade out. So, 20 months from now or so, everything should pretty much be 100% Sagamore. But we were very lucky to work very closely with Larry Ebersold, who was the master distiller at MGP for 25 to 30 years, worked there for over 40. And so he was on our project. As a matter of fact, he just came out for a visit a couple months ago. We occasionally have him come in and do an audit on us and check on us and evaluate us and spend a day in the lab with us and evaluate our products. And we send him new make and all the time just to have it evaluated, just for another quality control checkpoint. And so we were really lucky to work with him. He's the godfather of rye whiskey. I don't know if anybody's distilled more rye whiskey than him. And so
I don't think so.
He helped us kind of formulate these mash bills and what we were trying to achieve. And like you said, his connections at MGP might have gotten us a little something extra while we were there,
So Gildan writes down here, and I'm going to have to try it as well again. Nice stuff. I really like the smoothness, yet the subtle spice. Not the eucalyptus hammer that you are expecting when tasting a new rye. And so I really, really enjoy this as well. I think this is, I at whiskey fairs, when I pour this, people try that and go, oh, that's much smoother. That's much easier to drink than I ever expected. And then over here in Germany, we're talking about a price of under 55 euros at the moment for this bottle, which is a steal compared to many other things you can find.
That's great. Yeah, no, a lot of times people like, oh, I don't know if they had a bad experience or something. They're a little intimidated by rye because it can be very bold. Yep. And we have that for the more seasoned whiskey drinker, right? Yep. And so, that's why we have the portfolio that we have. Is I don't think someone's going to come into our portfolio and say, I absolutely love all 3. Ideally, they just, if we can get them to like one, that works.
I like all 3.
All right.
I've had a lot of people try all 3 and go, all right, that's nice. But then it's like the double oak, oh, that's really good. And like, oh, the cask strength, that's even better. So I was like, I'll take all 3. It's like, gotcha.
That's great.
Very, very good. That's a very good one. So if you have anything you would like to write down in the chat, anyone who's watching and tasting along, feel free to do that. If you have any questions here for Brian, please do that as well. I just love the complexity and yet the simplicity at the same time.
Yeah.
There's a depth there, but yet it's a little bit like playing chess. You can learn the moves real quick, but then you notice there's more going on if you really get into it.
And I, like you said, I've had a lot of people say, oh, this is a really nice rye. And then they'll name another brand. They say, but I like this one better. It's like, well, you're not even comparing apples to apples. It's a 41.5% ABV.
Yeah.
and you just named one that's 58% ABV. It's like,
exactly. That's not like, really fair.
Yeah. So, but I think, I appreciate the kind words. I think, like I said, a lot of people are new to rye, and our understanding is Maryland rye. If we're going to do a Maryland rye, we have to do something we think pays tribute to what historically was going on here. And it was always known as a sweet, a bit more fruit and floral. And, one that had just kind of roundness to it. And that's kind of what we went for in trying to achieve this. And, we have a lot of people who say this is just a really nice daily sipper. And on weekends, maybe I'll go for a little higher ABV,
Very, very nice. No, that's exactly. On the weekend, we can go a little bit higher, and we can actually use this for mixing, as you said, with your Manhattans and so on. A beautiful, beautiful bottle. Someone commented on the beginning, the bottle design is just absolute. I just really, one of the bottles that you can just pick up and pour and use, and just adore, I think. So well done there with that.
Thank you. That also takes it's a combination. It pays homage to one of the old distillers in Maryland made beautiful bottles.
Yeah.
And it felt like everything was hand blown. And then all of a sudden for some reason today, despite all the advances in machining and everything, we've gone to these very simple, generic looking bottles. When historically they made beautiful bottles. And then our logo is the 3 diamonds. So we actually, as you kind of showed, made it diamond shaped. And so it's a little bit like our logo, if you will. And then it doesn't have a front or back till we put a label on it. So it's a little bit friendly for, the manufacturing side of things.
Yeah. Excellent. Very, very nicely done. So let's go over here now to our next bottle, if you'd be so kind to do so with us.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yes. My favorite. The Double Oak. So good.
The Double Oak. The color on this one is just spectacular, as you can see on Jason's screen there. I mean, it's so dark, and it's probably what people think. It's gone through multiple barrels of multiple maturation stages, and so again, we'll go ahead and take. Oh yeah, that's gorgeous.
Isn't that nice? Come on.
Now, did you end up with batch 5 or 6, Jason?
So we have batch 6B.
Okay, fantastic. I got 6A in front of me. That's so right. Same batch. Close enough. Yeah. And so we'll take those 2 mash bills, right? You got the 95.5 and the 52. We'll age them for just about 5 years in the original American oak barrels. And then we'll go ahead, we'll blend them together at close, not quite, but closer to 50%, 50-50. And then we'll put them back into another new American oak barrel.
And an interesting barrel, something with a wave.
That's right. And so this particular barrel, we cut grooves down the length of the stave. So kind of inside the barrel creates these waves. And what that does is creates about 25% more surface area for the whiskey to interact with the wood. But instead of doing a heavy char, if we did a heavy char, it would basically burn off those waves. Yeah. So we do a heavy toast, light char 1, and then do an additional, then we do an additional 18 months in there. So we're about 6.5 years total when it's all said and done. But that second layer, that second aging picks up such a beautiful layer of wood sugars and color on it. It's like when I look at the color of this bottle and everything, it's just spectacular. And then we proof it down to 48.3% ABV. And so this one is just really unique and different. It was supposed to, we were going to do it one and done.
But really? Okay.
Yeah, this was originally supposed to be a one-time release, but we fell in love with it, and now it's a part of our core lineup. This one, I think, has, going up in ABV, has beautiful baking spice up front, really nice velvety mouthfeel. I love the toasted oakiness, but not over oaked. Yeah. Nice, almost like toasted macaroon, caramel, candied citrus, graham cracker, hints of chocolate. It's got a lot going on in it.
It does. So we don't have graham crackers over here, but we do know what you're talking about. Sorry.
Sorry.
That's all right. So I do really like this. I've had people come up and say there's artificial coloring. I said, no, it's not. Yes, there is. I said, no, there's not. There's just 2 barrels, brand new, both. Oh, okay. Wow, that's
allowed.
Amazing.
It's not allowed, and especially in Germany, right? Like, like that's one of the things we take a lot of pride in is like nothing is added to any of this. The only thing we add is water for proofing,
right?
And after that, everything comes from fermentation in barrels.
Yes,
and
exactly.
That's what I love about
time and a lot of love, right?
A lot of time, a lot of love, a lot of patience. Yes, for sure. And but that's what I love about whiskey is, it does take time. You can't rush it. You can't Amazon Prime it, as we say. You can't cut corners here. I think if you could have accelerated aging, Brown-Forman, Jim Beam, Diageo would have done that 100 years ago, right?
Yeah.
The folks in Scotland would have done that 100 years ago. And so Macallan would have said, why am I doing 40 years when I can do 5 if that's the case, right? Yeah. And so, but if you have the time and the patience, you can pick up some beautiful colors and some beautiful flavor notes and complexity. And I think that's what we all love about whiskey and kind of one of its charms.
All right. Tell us a little bit about the entire distilling process here and a little bit about your capacity, if you'd be so kind, while enjoying the double oak.
Yes. So we have our distillery. We run in the back. We have, I should have brought my, I forgot to convert everything to kilograms. And
I can do it for you. Remember, no problem. We'll do that.
I appreciate the helping out the foolish American.
Otherwise, I have my calculator open.
So in the back, we bring in, we have 3 silos, 1 for rye, 1 for malted barley, and 1 for corn. And each one holds about 90,000 pounds worth of grain.
All right, so about 20,000 divide. Okay, 2.2, so about 5,000 kilos.
5,000 kilos. Yep. Yeah. And so,
so 90,000, so it's 50,000. Yeah, 50
about
tons.
48,000 kilos.
Yeah, about 50 tons. Yes.
Yeah. And so
I forgot to carry the 0. Oh, shame on me.
And so we'll bring it in. Then we bring everything in via a bucket elevator, and then we'll weigh everything in our scale bins, and then we put everything through a roller mill, a 3-roller mill. We like, instead of a hammer mill, can be very inconsistent as far as the way it breaks up the rye and exposes the contents of the starch and so forth. We love the consistency of how the roller mill breaks down the grain for us. It'll go over from there into a screw conveyor for us via into our 6,000 gallon cooker. And then we do about, all said and done, it's about a 7-8 hour process, but we'll cook for about 4 hours.
Right.
And
for everyone, that's about 22,000 liters. All right. So
yeah, it's 22,000 liters. And then we'll do, we do about 1/3 of every cook is a back set. Okay. So we do a sour mash, and we like that to help with consistencies of flavoring. Helps balance the pH during the cook. And then it also helps with just kind of sustainability by not using 1/3 less water each time. It's also already hot from the last cook, so you can heat things up faster with the less steam. And then we go into a 3 or 4 day open top fermentation. So we'll pitch the yeast. It'll sit in there, open top fermentation. We have 9 6,500 gallon fermenters. And after that, we'll go to our 8,000 gallon beer well to feed it into the top of our column still, which is 24 inches in diameter, 40 feet tall, and has 19 distillation trays. And then we run that through one cycle, and then we run it a second time through our first doubler. And the doubler is kind of like a small pot still thumper, and then that helps bring up ABV, helps polish the distillate, make for a really clean distillate. And then we do that a third time, really, through a second doubler. So we do a triple distillation. We do that for a few reasons. We do think triple distillation makes for some very, very clean, beautiful distillate. Mm-hmm. And then historically, Maryland used a lot of 3-chamber stills.
Yeah.
They aren't that efficient. So we wanted to pick up efficiencies and make sure that, then we don't have to charge any more than necessary for the finished product. So we'll do that. Then we'll pump it over to the processing center where we fill up our 53-gallon barrels. They're always American oak. They're always new. We never use any barrels. And then we'll ship it out to our warehouse where we'll do, anywhere from, like I said, 48 years, and it depending, and eventually longer. But currently, the products we have on the market range from 4 to 8 years.
Excellent. Now, your capacity per day, you're doing how many barrels?
We can have the ability to do 15 barrels a day.
All right. Very good.
And so currently, we're working on a second. We run 7 days a week, but only one shift currently. Mm-hmm. We're hiring now to start a second shift in January or February.
All right. So just have a little bit. You could produce 1 million liters of alcohol a year at the moment. All right. So very, very good. Just so we have a range to compare to maybe Scotland, Ireland, and other places here.
Yeah.
So 15 barrels a day is not big, but it's also not small. So you're a good size.
15 barrels a shift.
A shift.
So
you could do 3 shifts if you wanted to.
Yeah, so we could do 45 barrels a day, or we could do about 45 barrels a day, and then we run about 50 weeks of the year.
Right. Okay. See, I missed that with the shift part. I'm so sorry there. Excellent. And there was a question here. The guy from Poland, Flurp, asks, the milling inside the barrels, that's an additional cost step. Yes. So
yeah.
It costs more. It's actually much more expensive, but the taste verifies is what I'm going to say. What would you say?
Yes, I would say when we look at it, it's not a big added cost. Independent stave is pretty good with their efficiencies.
Yeah.
What's the real cost on this driver is the fact that we use 3 barrels.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Yeah, because you have 2 plus 1.
So that's just 3 barrels in general is quite expensive. And then there's the labor of filling the first couple barrels, taking them to a warehouse, leaving them there for 5 years, going back to the warehouse, bringing the barrels back to the distillery, blending them, filling barrels again, then driving them back to the warehouse and re-racking them again for another 18 months. So there's a lot of labor and the barrels themselves. The milling ends up being, the price difference on that ends up being very, very minimal. But he's right. There is a few more dollars associated with that barrel compared to the other barrels. But it's really more about how many barrels and how much labor actually has to go in to make this product.
All right. And another person once asked me about the barrel entry proof. Where are we at originally, and where are we maybe with the double oak as well?
So we're still all new make goes into the barrel at 60% ABV.
Okay, very good. Mm-hmm.
When we dump the first round of aging for double oak, we don't proof it at all then either. We just refill the barrels. So depending on where they are in the warehouse, they could range anywhere from 52% to 64%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Excellent. So very, very good. I thoroughly enjoy the double oak here. I cannot tell you. I purposely filled up my glass, and I'm going to enjoy this after our stream as well. This is the one I just adore. All right. Very good. So we're looking at a price over here in Germany at the moment, about 78 euros still. All right. So that's for this product, for what you're getting, also a steal in my opinion.
Yeah, and it's you see a lot of multicast with scotches. You don't see many with
American products. Yeah, rye. Not a rye very much. No. So you were one of the people that innovative things here. Now, we could talk very briefly about all the different bottles we can't get over here yet at the moment. But if someone comes to the Baltimore, you do have a very interesting selection of other finishes except for the double oak. Make my mouth water, please.
Okay, so there is currently in the visitor center, the 3 core, and then we do have our PX sherry finish, which actually is fairly widely distributed in the U.S., but it's a limited release.
Yes.
I also have one called a Rio cider.
Oh.
We worked with some local cidery, and so it's like very much a bright apple. So we'll give them our barrels. They'll age cider in them, and then they'll send them back, and we'll finish aged whiskey in them. So it's a beautiful cider finish rye whiskey. So it's basically like a cinnamon apple pie.
Oh, you're talking my Thanksgiving language here.
And that one's interesting too, because I believe it's only about 42.5% ABV.
No.
But that one is where we thought it, we'll go through many test points, and that's where we thought it really shined. I have our 5-year-old bottled in bond, which is 100% Maryland distilled, Maryland aged product. And then I also have our port finish, which is our first port finish release since 2019, when we won the world's best rye whiskey in San Francisco with our port finish. And this one is 6-year-old rye, then finished in port barrels for almost 3 years. So it's almost 9 years total. And I believe that is 53.5% ABV.
Okay, yeah.
And
sounds delicious.
Those are what is available in the distillery right now. That and most of them are not available. The Rio and the port are only at the distillery. And so typically, if you visit us, we have one release that's only available typically at the distillery.
That's very, very nice.
So we did like a mezcal finish one recently. We did a mead finish.
I heard about that. That was supposed to be awesome. People really
great.
Like that.
Some really nice honey and some baking spices. And these are just ways for us to learn. And then if we see something we really like, we think about maybe scaling it up for a larger release underneath the Reserve Series.
Okay. And that's a good thing about these experiments at the beginning. It's like, okay, oh, excellent, let's go more. And then we have to wait another 2 years by the time you have the finishing process done. And it's like, okay.
Yeah, if you find something you really liked, it'll be like, perfect, we can release that. We can do it again in 3 years.
Yeah. So, as we said, love and a lot of time, right?
Yep. And like I said, this was our first port finish release since 2019. And so, but we really like it.
That's good. All right, so we're going to move over to our last one of the day. And this is going to be our Cask Strength, which I also very much like. Nathan and I, we actually tried this in Berlin together for the first time, a blend of straight rye whiskeys. And he used to love, Nathan is our partner in the UK for N10 bourbons, and he used to also like the Double Oak a lot, but he said that's his new favorite. There's a little bit of like a black cherry moment going on in there that he just absolutely adores. So.
And what batch did you end up with there on the cask? Now, are you 11?
I am I'm 12 AD.
Yeah.
Okay. Tell me more about the 12.
That's probably, I bet that's over 70% of that is 7-year-old.
Oh, wow. That's maybe the reason why this is so good. Yes.
Yeah. And so, again, what we like about this one is the very first whiskey we tried tonight was a 4 to 6-year-old. This takes basically the same similar batches and then mixes and blends those two straight rye whiskeys together at the same ratio. So it's the signature, it's the cask strength version of the signature, but we do put a little more age on it.
Yeah.
And so once we got a fair amount of 7-year-old in there. And so, and then that I believe is probably about 56.
We always have 56.3. If I say 56.1 over here in Europe.
Yep. And so, so I love this one because it's got that, what you want with the cask strength. It has that nice, big, bold black pepper, sensationally long finish. I find the whiskey goes from the tip of the tongue to the back of the tongue, back to the tip of the tongue. out to the sides.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also amazing how drinkable it is for that ABV, and that those two mash bills, again, giving it some depth in it, some layers in it. And even though it's big, it's got this kind of little hints of roundness to it, you know?
Definitely. So I remember I was pouring one guy. He was one of the organizers of the Whiskey Festival, Whiskey Fair, and he came over and said, "Hey, Jason, I like the bottles. Let's try all three of these." And he went for the signature. I was like, "That's okay, a little bit weak." I took the double oak. I really like, and he I'll take two. And it just a nip. Yeah, I was like, "I'll just take two, please." I was like,
Yeah.
"Are you?" Yeah, very much so. He said, "This is awesome." He said, "I'll just take two."
Yeah, I always joke around, and I want to reiterate joke, but like if you like the cask strength, sometimes the signature one might be more of a breakfast whiskey for you, right? So like, you know, because you are jumping quite a bit in ABV, and a lot of the folks that like higher ABVs just like higher ABVs, and I get it. Everyone's palate's different, but
and
you know,
some people do develop. Yeah, at the beginning, 40% alcohol is actually a lot. Nothing else we drink has beer, wine, nothing has 40%. And we come up here and now we're going, now 41.5% is just too weak. It's like, well, I agree, but doesn't that say something about us? We're a little bit like a cask strength spoiled.
That's the whiskey community for you, right?
Yeah.
You know, that's for sure. You know, and I'm maybe some people will hate this, but I'm not afraid to use this one in a cocktail either. I do like spirit forward cocktails. And so, you know, especially around the holiday season, it's just kind of one of these where you want a cocktail, but you still just want the whiskey to come out. And, you know, for me, I like my Manhattans up with no ice. And so, and maybe I go a little.
Those are dangerous, by the way. Those types of Manhattans. Wow.
And I tend to go a little heavier on the cask strength rye and a little lighter on the vermouth. So it's barely a Manhattan, but you know, it's really great. And so I love the versatility of the entire line, really.
I'm just looking at my double oak. You can't barely see this, but there's like a ring of oil around the glass in the middle here. It just so clings to the glass and hardly even wants to drip down. It's so there's so much viscosity going on there. That's just a beautiful, beautiful whiskey.
That's neat. It does.
That is. I was like, wow, look at that. There's just a ring.
Yeah.
Excellent. All right. So we can visit the distillery. We now have a good idea about the processes that are used there. We have our core range. We talked about our special bottles. Now, for us over here in Germany, it's a little bit difficult, but for the people close by, you have something with penny, and you have something with also charity and some type of events that go on at the distillery. Could you let us just know what we're missing out on as well?
So we do have a lot of fun things that we do at the distillery in the warmer time of year. We do all sorts of live music on the weekends, out on the lawn, on the water. It's all free, and come hang out and bring your friends and family, dog, you know, and enjoy yourself. We do a lot of cocktail making classes. We do a lot of in-depth sensory classes. We have classes where you can come, and we have a glass blower, and you can make your own rocks glasses.
Oh, cool.
We have some where, you know, we use this time of year, we'll use the barrel hoops. And you can come make your own wreath out of the barrel hoops for the holidays. We just had a big holiday tree lighting here. And so we'll do, you know, all sorts of, we'll bring in snow making machines, and we'll do all sorts of like hot chocolate for the kids and music and food vendors and so forth. So we do a lot of that. And then Penny's Proof, I think what you hinted on, is something that we do at the distillery every November. And what it is actually is this little guy.
Wow, I'll make you big for this one. Come on, show me everything. Yeah.
So this is when, as I mentioned, we originally started with MGP, and everyone said, well, when did we try your stuff? And we said, well, what if we actually let them try our stuff, but realize that why we're waiting for it to age. So we'd start these series called Penny's Proof, and we would sell you 3 200 milliliter bottles in this package. And we would do a 2.5-year release, and then a 3.5-year release, and then a 4.5-year release. So annually, every year, releasing it 1 year older. And you have 3 bottles. So you can sip one now, share one with a friend who couldn't make it, and then savor later. And you can actually then go back after the series was completed. So when we originally started this, we did 2.5, 3.5, 4.5, and we released our first ever bottled in bond.
Yeah.
And then you can go back and take the 2.5, the 3.5, the 4.5, and actually do a tasting and realize why we're waiting. We realize like it's good and it's tracking well, but and each year you can see the depth and the character and the complexity picking up. And so I think people really appreciated that experience of following along in the maturation and aging, the transparency. And then our big column still shiny like a copper penny. Here in the States, we call her penny. So we would call it penny's proof. So we're kind of proof of concept. And we would sell this to you for 1 penny.
Yeah.
And so now the only thing is there's only 597 of that. And everyone always says, why 597? It's because every year we want to give you samples from the same batch. And that allows us to do it over 3 years. And so this year we started a new chapter of that called the Maryland Growing Series. And we did a 2.5-year release of a whiskey made with 100% grain grown here in Maryland. Most of it from our own farm, Sagamore Farm, and aged in barrels crafted out of Maryland oak. Oh. And so it was 100% Maryland, true 100% Maryland rye whiskey. And we did 2.5, and then we'll do a 3.5, 4.5, maybe a 5.5, depending on what we think. I don't know what the product's going to be yet, so we got some time, but it'll be our first like true 100% Maryland rye whiskey, because not only made in Maryland, but made with all Maryland grain, all Maryland oak barrels. So we're very excited about the new chapter of Penny's Proof. And like I said, it's every November, and we usually do a special whiskey release with it on top, and it's kind of an all-day party. And, it's just a chance for our loyal followers to kind of follow along with the aging and maturation and realize why we don't always force products out on the market, and we take time to age them because it really is better.
Yeah. So maybe one, you mentioned very briefly the growing of rye whiskey and the rye itself for the whiskey. And now you just mentioned your own farm. Last time we talked, and we always somehow have our streams in December, right after your November release of these products. How difficult is to actually find rye whiskey, and how have you now worked together with farmers to solve some of that problem?
Good question. Being just kind of ignorant, I think originally I thought a lot of people still grew rye grain in Maryland or even in the U.S., but apparently the answer is no, not really at all. It's a tough grain to grow. You don't make a lot of money on it. You don't get paid unless you till it into the earth as a cover crop. It's not subsidized. It's not really easy to insure. It doesn't have a lot going for it. So no one wants to grow something if they don't have an end user. And so we ended up just saying, well, we'd really like to start growing more rye in Maryland. And so we started working with our farmers in kind of like a shared value program, saying, what if we partnered up with you and said, you grow the rye in your fields, labor to go in it. We'll pay for the seed up front, out of pocket. So you have no out of pocket expense. We'll share that burden with you. We'll share that risk with you, and we'll agree upon a price that works well for you and us. We have no middleman, no wholesaler, no broker. And first year we did 50,000 pounds and with one farm. And 5 years later, this year we harvested over 1 million pounds of Maryland grown rye and have 3 farms going and we have silos, grain cleaners, mills, and we've invested in this infrastructure with our farming community, and we're really loving it. And like I said, as I said earlier, you really want to own everything from start to finish. You want to make something great. You want, like anybody, if you can control it from start to finish, you'll feel much better about what you're doing and what you're getting and know what you're getting. And so that's what we're enjoying about this. We did find there were some added perks we never thought about. You know, it's great with how expensive freight and everything's gotten.
Yeah.
The fact that I can drive, 36 kilometers to go get more rye, and versus saying, on a freight, a train, or via a ship or something.
Calling up Germany, say we need some more rye again.
Germany, I need some more rye. Yeah, exactly. It's not as easy as that. And so it's been very, very fun and an exciting program to really start growing local grain. Now, we'll never get it all from Maryland, and we don't want to get it all from Maryland. There's too much risk to that.
Mm-hmm.
But we do love using our farm and growing a lot of grain. Now, we do get 100% of the corn from our own farm. An entire year's worth of corn comes from our own farm. As a matter of fact, we even sell some of that corn off to other distilleries and so forth because we grow more than we actually typically need. Mm-hmm. So it's been a fun program. It's been great.
So if my calculations are almost right, if you have 1 million pounds, that's still about a fourth of what you need for that 1 million liters at the beginning. So,
you're dead on. You're very good.
Yeah, okay. A little bit I understand at the moment of what's going on there. So that's great. So yeah, that's actually very good.
We don't see ourselves ever getting much more than about a third or so from Maryland. But, we've been running nothing but Maryland grain for the last month or two, and we got another month or two to go. And then we'll switch over to rye grain that comes from Germany, Canada, and other parts, which is really good quality too. We've never had it. We like it, but it's fun having it right here in your backyard.
Now, I'm going to ask the question. You can say no comment, but do you believe there is such a thing as terroir in whiskey and in rye whiskey?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Yes.
I do think there's just, whether it's soil content, whether it's the limestone spring water that sits on at the house, whether it's just the natural organic flora and fauna of the environment in which it grows, I absolutely think, and aging, Jason, as you know, we're probably actually one of the few in the U.S., certainly not Ireland and Scotland are similar, but probably one of the few in the U.S. that's actually aging all their whiskey on the water.
Yeah.
Our warehouses are, as a bird flies, 700 meters from basically the Chesapeake Bay and the ocean, so there, all these things could play a role.
So rye whiskey by the sea. I haven't even heard that before. That was excellent. So Gordon wrote down here, I'm really enjoying the Double Oak. What a great rye. Probably one of the best I've ever had. He's struggling a little bit with the cask strength. Try a little bit of water. It's okay. It's allowed. I sometimes like to dilute my whiskeys from the 56 down to 50 and go, oh, this is perfect now. I can highly recommend that. But you have a little bit more there to play around with. That's great. Now, Brian, our time is almost up. It's amazing. The hour is over already. I've learned so much again. I'm so excited to have this product over here in Germany. Heiko writes down the signature is nice. Cask strength is excellent, especially with some drops of water too. Double Oak is more excellent. He couldn't have said it better. Yeah, I like the sweetness. And that's the one way of putting it. Any last thoughts or any last comments you'd like to say before we end this stream?
No, I would. Well, I guess maybe I do. It's one. I want to just say thank you, everybody, very much, and I have a couple of those last comments in there, and say it's your whiskey. So whatever you want to do to enjoy it, adding some water, putting it on an ice cube, putting it in a cocktail. No one should ever have a problem. It's your whiskey, and if you're enjoying it and enjoying it responsibly, that's all that matters. But Jason, thank you to all your listeners and followers. Thank you very much for the opportunity and support, and very much appreciate the time.
Yeah, I look forward to hopefully being able to see you again next year when I back up on the East Coast, maybe visiting my family down in Virginia and being able to see what's going on there at Sagamore Rye. All right, WhiskyJason here. So if you need any more information, please just contact me at whiskyjason@gmail.com, or one of our premium partners we work with a lot at the moment is still Dine Whiskey here in Germany, and other places have this also on stock already. So just do a good Google search and you'll be able to find it. Thank you very much for watching. All the best. Bye-bye.